This is the most pitiful figure skater I've ever seen. She obviously got the first place in the national competition, but the judges let her leave the arena. Because of an unspoken rule in figure skating, the judges never choose those players with no background. On the contrary, only those nobles are qualified to represent the country, and she does not agree with the established result. She angrily asked the judges. She clearly suppressed all the players. Why would she be eliminated for no reason? What she didn't know was that the judges just took a look at her shabby clothes and concluded that she did not deserve to represent the country. If I can't pick another sport. So in order to enter the national team, she prepared to take a risk. After the competition, she let go of her figure, asking the judges how to win their respect. But the judges directly told her, figure skating does not entirely depend on skating skills, because you represent the country. When you compete in the Olympics, so you need a player with a perfect to sacrifice her happiness for a better future. Only because her parents left her when she was young, she could not meet the requirements of the competition. Then, she could only marry a strange man as a stepping stone, in exchange for the chance of hope. In order to make this marriage look less disgusting, she asked the man to come to the restaurant to cultivate feelings. But every time they date, the mother will accompany them in person, and the mother will always supervise them to avoid insulting the wife and child. But the mother's interference could not prevent Tanya from moving on. Soon, the two's feelings were as hot as the wedding hall. However, after the ceremony, the mother rejected her with a long face. Marry the first idiot who says you're pretty. You fuck dumb. You don't marry dumb. And her stubborn belief led her to pursue her dream. Even though she was a brilliant genius raised by her mother, this kind of biased education also shaped Tanya, who was born for her dream. From the age of 4, the education of her mother's ambition had already entered the bone marrow. Just because of her daughter's heartless words, she did not care about the teacher's obstruction and left her daughter in the skating rink. Let's talk about skating all day and night. Can't shut her up about it. So it's easier for me to put her on ice, if you know what I mean. Inevitably, the teacher could only leave Tanya in the dust. Tanya did not disappoint the public. She quickly stood out in the youth group competition. However, every time she skated, her mother never allowed her daughter to go to the bath forward and continue to practice skating. Even if she made a difficult move, she could not win her mother's praise. And what came was her mother's personal insult. There's nothing special there. Are you even trying? Because there's other places I'd rather fucking be. She inevitably felt a little disappointed. Even after each training, her mother would always use all kinds of excuses to punish her. Even if it was painful, she could only bite her teeth and persist. Even when she was writing homework at home, it was hard to escape her mother's claws. But her mother told her, anger is the key to your potential, and her father is the lighthouse on her way to growth. Even in the dark, it can light her up. But her mother became the fuse that her father left. Soon, her father could not tolerate her mother's personality. Then he was ready to leave Tanya and start a new life. So he asked his father to take her away. When he left, but 12 hours of work a day made his father unable to take care of her. After thinking for a while, his father still stepped forward and walked away. Only Tanya, who remained sad, although she cried, she had to go on with her life. After that, she not only inherited all the bad habits of her mother. Violence and dirty words are even engraved in her bones in the last scene. At this time, she was like a raging bull. However, only skating can dissipate her inner anger. Until her husband broke into her world, she had to change her life full of holes. Then the two slowly met, as if time had stopped. This atmosphere of yours made the two of them unable to calm down for a long time. And Tanya also welcomed the excitement of youth. The small and messy road encouraged her to move forward. However, her husband's long-awaited excitement made her extremely nervous. But all of this was seen by her mother. So in order to avoid her daughter's insult, every time her daughter dates, she will ask the two of them to be embarrassed. Until the daughter's date is over, she will give up. Although her mother is like a headless fly. However, her husband is like the spring breeze in March. Every time he pulls her out of the swamp, he will comfort Tanya's angry heart. He will praise Tanya's unparalleled skating talent. And Tanya is also lost in the praise. Then he will hide the love at the bottom of his heart. What? You don't like me? Her husband also revealed his true feelings for Tanya. Soon, the two of them will officially date and spend the rest of their lives together. But soon after, her husband removed his disguise and revealed his true nature. He will beat Tanya for no reason. Even after regaining his sanity, he will confess to Tanya. However, after apologizing, he still refuses to change his mind. It seems that the genes engraved in the bones will not change easily. And after that, Tanya will not only blame herself for all the crimes. Even every time she is abused, she will be in self-doubt. Just because she has lived under the shadow of her mother since childhood. However, every time she is abused, her mother never stops her. And she will only say some cold words to stimulate her. It seems that being beaten by her daughter is the right thing to do. Maybe he said it to you. Maybe he learned to keep your big mouth shut. I'm sure it helps me. Facing this situation, Tanya is too angry to say anything. Although her heart is as painful as a needle, she can only accept it. After all, she still needs to live. Never look at personal skills. Only gentle and elegant players will be adored by the judges. However, her image was the opposite of this. The competition costumes of other players were sold out. But Tanya could only sew it by herself. She thought that she could show off her talent on the rink by showing off her real treasure. But in the eyes of the judges, it was just cheap garbage. Later, in the new round attitude, after all, she wanted to keep her feet on the ground in the future. However, the coach's persuasion hit her against her will. Although the anger was released, this way of cheating undoubtedly hurt the coach. So in order to relieve economic pressure and compete in the best state, Tanya and her husband soon set out on a new marriage. She knew that she couldn't move forward on her own, and she needed help from outsiders. Just when she was full of joy and had infinite aspirations for the future, her mother poured a basin of cold water for her. You fuck dumb. You don't marry dumb. And she had long been reluctant to her mother's harsh words. Then she just had a moment of melancholy and refused to leave. After the marriage, Tanya was like a reincarnation. So she won countless championships in a split second. Soon she was ready to enter the national elite tournament. When she was carrying the joy that was hard to express through the dark and narrow passage, she was scolded and questioned by the audience endlessly. At this moment, Tanya was also irritated by the rude words of the audience. The coach encouraged her that she was the most potential player, and you only need to use your strength to break all negative life. Soon the coach's words restored her mind. However, what surprised everyone, anger could inspire her potential. She was as bright as a star on the stage. As the music sounded, she followed the rhythm. At this moment, she had to prove herself with her strength. With a gorgeous hook shot, the hearts of the audience were also ignited in an instant. And what was more exciting was that Tanya challenged the never-successful 3.5-week rotation. She only saw that she had improved her speed to the extreme, and she kept sending ice-cold arrows at the ice. She was bound to have a battle of fire and ice. As she started to jump slowly, it was as if time had stopped. She almost completed an incredible move. And she will also make a perfect arc in the history of skating. She not only proved herself with her strength, but also became the first U.S. 3.5-week rotation skater. At this moment, she was as bright as a star. All the efforts in the past were also turned into a successful momentum at this moment. But it didn't last long. After winning the championship, Tanya began to be proud of herself. She was not only addicted to eating and drinking, but also indulged in dieting every day to increase. She saw that the Winter Olympics was coming, so she transferred her new training plan to her brother-in-law. But what awaited her was her brother-in-law's more frequent domestic violence. Her brother-in-law vented all his anger at her at work. As the rumors of fire and ice often caused disputes, the gap between the two of them also became more and more intense. From the very beginning of the boxing kick, it developed into a gun attack and even provoked the police many times. But every time her brother-in-law was able to avoid a situation with words. Although life is always full of crisis, Tanya never gave up her dream. She was unwilling to continue to be tormented by her brother-in-law's divorce. Then she set off on her own journey to the Winter Olympics. Due to the misunderstanding of her, she was still standing on the throne of the champion. She not only fell to the ground in front of the audience all over the world, but also lost the glory she once had. She sat in the room and remembered the once handsome and cool figure, but she was no longer the ambitious skating genius. At this moment, Tanya really hoped that someone would pull her up from the abyss. But in reality, only the endless darkness was around her. Because of the failure of the competition, all the sponsors. Now she can only run around to make a living. The glory she once had also left her. The dream of the past has long been lost in the busy road. The so-called dream of hard work can only stay in the past, and the unhappiness in her heart has also become dim. But there is no way out in life, and hope is turning. After seeing Tanya, who has repeatedly failed in the competition, the coach found Tanya, who was confused, and the coach hoped that she could participate in the next Olympic Games. Then she told the coach how her body was doing. The world is giving you a second chance. I know you don't believe in them, but I do. However, word of encouragement from the coach made her ignite the flame again. Then she changed her attitude and wiped off her nail polish. The day-to-day training began very quickly. She had a relentless footwork in the mountains. She had a firm will in the gym. She was determined to die in the skating rink. But that did not light up her lost path. And when she stood on the ring with all her might, she was still treated unfairly by the judges. So she put down her attitude and asked the judges for the reason. But the judges told her directly, skating does not entirely depend on skating skills because you represent the country. When you compete in the Olympics, why can't it just be about the skating? She was finally able to make it to the Winter Olympics. But before the competition, she received a threatening letter. The letter threatened Tanya. If she dared to take a step into the skating rink, she would be shot at before the competition. She was terrified and never dared to compete again. This letter was undoubtedly an inspiration for Jeff, so she asked her friend to write a threatening letter to her opponent, Nancy. This way Tanya could easily win. However, her friend misunderstood Jeff's intention. Then she took the initiative to hire a boxer. While Nancy was resting in the middle of the game, Sir Egwin broke his leg, and Jeff saw Nancy suffering in the TV. This sudden news made Jeff extremely scared. He soon found a reason to ask his friend, but his friend bragged about the shocking news. It seemed that he had no idea that the danger was approaching. He even confessed that Tanya's threat was from him. With this job, he can be a bodyguard. At this time, no one can beat Tanya. After endless efforts, he finally got the quota for the Winter Olympics. He was still immersed in joy. Little did he know that a storm was coming. But his friend seemed to have not yet noticed the danger. He was still bragging about how his friend injured Nancy. This undoubtedly made the Federal Bureau of Investigation show all kinds of tricks. So he found a friend to investigate. After a round of interrogation, his friend released Jeff. Due to the lack of evidence, the police could not arrest Jeff. Tanya only realized the seriousness of the matter. Then he tried to figure out the origin of Jeff's case. Skating is my whole fucking life. What did you do? What did you actually fucking do? This punch made him sure that Jeff was the mastermind. Then he came to the police station to expose Jeff's crime. In the end, under Tanya's exposure, Jeff was sentenced to prison. In a fit of anger, he blamed Tanya for all the crimes. Tanya soon became Jeff's mastermind. Then he was pushed to the edge of a cliff. Although he wanted to explain and try to clear the suspicion, all the explanations in front of the evidence were in vain. When false lies are engraved in people's hearts, people will stand at the top of morality to judge. The truth often becomes unimportant. As the door of the house was surrounded by reporters, it was impossible for him to walk, and he could only hide in the room alone and digest the injustice of fate. It was only until his mother's appearance that he was relieved. Then his mother's information. The good words just transferred his attention. Then he took the opportunity to steal the information and take revenge. At this moment, there was no short-term family affection. He kicked his mother out with his head covered. Even the harbor of this family affection disappeared. Since then, the mother and son have no contact. And the Ice Skating Association also wants to remove his name from the Winter Olympics. So in order to participate, he sued the Ice Skating Association World Competition on the stage. But before the competition, he was defeated by the rumors. The love gradually became a painful sleep. He endured the attack of the world alone in the dressing room. At this moment, he has already been wiped out by reality. He was wiped out by life. He lost his way in the midst of time. He lost his way on the path of dissatisfaction, and that dream was slowly lost in the unknown. However, it seems that he still keeps a smile on the stage and faces the world. But the scars hidden under the mask can't be healed easily. And then, in order not to leave any regrets, he tried to do every move. But soon after the competition, he stopped the game. Because his shoelaces were completely broken, he couldn't continue. At this moment, he was deeply in despair. The long-pressed emotion was like a wave that swam to his heart. Then he found the judge and told him about the grievance in his heart. Tanya, who got the second chance, tried her best. But the judge who had prejudice still gave her the lowest score. She is also known as the worst skater since the Winter Olympics. This made her cross swords with the champion again. But fate doesn't seem to want to let her go easily. After the game, the court sentenced Tanya to a second trial. She was not only sentenced to 3 years in prison, but also sentenced to a lifetime of competition. And for Tanya, this was definitely a death sentence. Skating is the starting point of her life and also the end of her life. Your Honor, I don't have an education. All I know is skating. That's all I know. And I am no one if I can't. No, I can't skate. You can't. Please. Because, just send me to jail and then I can still skate. It doesn't matter how she explains it. But in reality, people always like to play with kindness. Flowers will eventually be helpless. We will eventually cross the river of time. Why don't we take a look at the scenery at the top of the mountain? So Tanya, who was sentenced to a lifetime of competition, had to transform into a female boxer in order to she was able to do her best. So she turned that indifference into determination. However, when she was about to fall, it was as if her mind returned to the 3.5-week rotation.